Okay. Սիրելի ներկաներ, բարի երեկո բոլորիդ։ Մեր երկրորդ հարցազրույցն է, որ գունենանք այսօր մեր շրջանավարտներուն հետ։ Այսօրվա խումբը կազմված է 4 հոգի է, որոնք մասնակցած են գլխավորապես կենսաբանության մեջ, biology։ Անոնք են Վարանտ Խոդավերդյան, մասնակցած կենսաքիմիագիտության եւ կենսաբանության մեջ, biochemistry and biology, Օհան Շանթ Մանուկյան, մասնակցած կենսաբժշկական ջարդարագիտության մեջ, biomedical engineering, Արի Կազանջյան, մասնակցած քիմիագիտական ջարդարագիտության մեջ, chemical engineering, իսկ Շանթ Մարուխյան մասնակցած է կենսաբանության մեջ, biology, եւ այժմ գահաճախ է բժշկական համալսարան։ Հբարդենք մեր բոլոր շրջանավարտներով եւ զիրենք բոլորնալ պիտի աշխատենք ներկայացնել գարկով, փոքրիկ խումբերով, ամսական հերթականությամբ, հիմնվելով իրենց մասնակցության վրա։ Dear parents and friends, we are very proud of our alumni, and we are proud of our monthly speaker series. Our alumni will be featured the third Tuesday of each month, sharing their experiences at SSAES, their educational paths, their passions, and career journeys. We hope this will help our community have a greater understanding of what our alumni have done, are doing, and how our school has been a part of their journey. Please mark your calendars for the next Alumni Roundtable on Tuesday, May 18. Heather?
Thank you, Digin Huri. Welcome, everyone. It's great to see all of you. Thank you for joining us this evening. And our alumni tonight have shared similar experiences as students while also sharing similar paths on their life journey, pursuing passions and their research with drug and vaccine development. This evening, we have the following alumni panelists. Varant Khodaverjan is a senior scientist for Pfizer in vaccine research and development. We have Ohan Shant Manugyan, who is the Associate Director of the Global Oncology Business Franchise at Merck. We have Ari Kazanjan with us, an engineer in clinical and commercial manufacturing of biologics at Pfizer, while pursuing his MBA at Babson. And we also have Shant Maruchian, who conducted research with the Center for Virology and Vaccine Research at Beth Israel and is currently pursuing his medical degree at Tufts University School of Medicine. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Our alumni have a connection to St. Stephen's and their love for the sciences and a passion for drug and vaccine development. I will try to put their biographies in the chat this evening for those of you who have not seen them in our social media posts. We welcome you all, and we also ask that you please put any questions you may have in the chat for the end of the program, and we will go through your questions as they come in. This evening, we'd like to start with our usual question of share your childhood memories of your time at SSAES. What are some of those fondest memories? And we can begin with Varant.
Hi, everybody. Can everyone hear me just fine?
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you very much for inviting me to be here. It's a pleasure to be talking with everyone and sharing my experience from St. Stephen's. So I have many great memories from St. Stephen's. I remember having a lot of fun, as well as the things that really stuck out to me were the projects that we always had to do. There were a lot of them, and I really enjoyed it. I think it sparked a lot of creativity, which is definitely something that has, really made an impact on me. Of course, I loved recess. And the reason why I bring that up is because there was always this patch of gravel in the back of the courtyard. And I'd go there and I'd dig up rocks. This is when Jurassic Park had just come out. So I thought I was being an anthropologist. So that was just a side fun thing I did during recess. But one of the memories that really stuck with me the most from St. Stephen's is we had a project. I want to say it was in the 3rd grade, and I believe it was from Mr. West. I really hope I got that right. And we actually mummified a chicken because we were learning about ancient Egypt. And to me, that was one of the coolest things we could have actually done. I mean, it's one thing to learn about the process, to learn that, you use all these salts and you can bury it and wrap it, but to actually do it and to bury it in the little dirt courtyard in the back where they would always grill during the banquets. I don't know if Deacon Hori, if you knew that's where we actually buried it, but that's where we left it for months. And then we came back months later and dug it out, and it was, a mummified chicken. And that was something that really, really stuck with me. I thought that was really cool. And I think, one of the first science experiments I did at a school. And I thought that was amazing and really sparked something. So I'd say that was my favorite moment.
Great, thank you so much. That was a good memory. Ohan Chant.
Well, first off, thank you for having me on this panel. I think it's a true pleasure to speak to parents, colleagues, alumni, prospective parents, everyone, the whole community. So thank you for having me. I think I'll keep it pretty short and brief on fond memories, even though it's extremely, extremely difficult to do because I spent some of the best years of my young life at St. Stephen's. But I have to go with the cliche because I take a lot of pride in being a part of the very first class that went to Armenia. No one else can say that other than us, our year. So I take a lot of absolute pride and joy in that. It was an amazing trip. I mean, I can't begin to summarize the learnings, just the cultural impact it had on us, at least speaking for myself. Just being so young, you learn so much about Hayot Spot Platoon, what's going on, where we came from, how long and rich our history is, and then touching down there and just breathing that air and going from site to site, church to church, museum to museum, just walking around the city, mingling with, being very young, but nonetheless mingling with the folks that live there. I mean, it's something that can't be bought. It's invaluable. And that really, for me, was the absolute fondest memory I had. I am still very, very, very close friends with a majority of my class. We were a very tight-knit class and a very successful class, if I may say it that. A lot of us have gone on to do some great things in life. So I think we really had an amazing time, both in Armenia and in the 7-8 years from preschool to 5th grade when we graduated and sort of all started going our separate ways. So I'll keep it brief at that. I think Armenia was definitely the fondest memory I had, and again, very proud that we were the first class that did that. I'll wrap it there, Heather, just to give everyone else a chance to do it. You're on mute, Heather.
Technical issues. Thank you so much, Ohan Chant. That was a great, great memory. Adi, how are you? Tell us your memory.
Yes, thank you for having me. I echo the sentiment of my peers and alumni here. It's an honor to really speak on my experiences at St. Stephen's and the impact that it's had on my life. When I think back, really something that I remember vividly about my experience at St. Stephen's is the Hayot Spot Platoon classes. If I remember correctly, we used to have them on Thursdays once a week, where it was sort of a deep dive on our Armenian history as opposed to the normal daily Armenian lesson that we had. And I really vividly remember Deacon Artemis taking us to the library on the 2nd floor at the end, and it was a privilege to go there and have our own, quiet space, different than where we usually have our normal classes. And it was, sacred to be surrounded by Armenian books in this library and learn about, like Ohan Chant said, our deep history and really learn about ourselves. And it was really something that significantly shaped my own identity as well. And Dean Artemis has such an amazing way of storytelling and conveying, the challenges and the tribulations that our people went through. And it's hard not to come out of those sessions feeling such pride for being Armenian and, learning about yourself and your own identity and your own history.
Thank you. Shant.
Yeah, just like everyone said, honor to be here. What better way to, come back and see how my peers, have excelled in our own respective fields, especially in biology. And, part of that success I definitely owe to, going to school at St. Stephen's and the rigor of having to do, your regular math class, English class, science, and then having Armenian class on top of that and learning how to balance that kind of workload made the transition, a lot easier into middle school and then high school. In terms of fondest memories, as everyone has said, there's so many. I have to say, being cliche again with the Armenia trip, it's hard not to say that that's, one of my fondest memories. I wasn't part of the first class that went to Armenia, so I saw each successive class, go to the gym on the day that they were leaving. Dead Hyde came and like prayed, and everyone was kind of giving their well wishes, and you could feel the excitement. It was like electric, and I was counting down the days where that could be me. I could be in those shoes. So I think definitely what stood out to me was finally getting to that day when we could board the bus with Dean Artemis and all my classmates, just looking forward to seeing in person all the things that we learned about. As Ohan Shant said, that kind of experience is unparalleled. It's invaluable. And then in terms of, aside from the Armenia trip, I have to say after school basketball on Fridays, that, thank God it's Friday, first of all, amazing feeling. And then just having, a chance to blow off steam after the hard work week, and doing that with your closest friends was, I think that stood out to me the most.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to our second question is, what was your transition like leaving St. Stephen's from secondary and then to higher education, both socially and academically? Varant, would you like to begin?
Sure. So transitioning from St. Stephen's to my next school. So I went to Malden Public Schools, and I went to a gifted program. And in terms of the academic rigor, I did not feel as though I was any more challenged academically going into my next phase of learning, I guess. I thought that I was very well prepared, both in terms of the fundamentals and as well as being able to learn, which is, I think, a skill that is very important. And I think St. Stephen's really did a good job of preparing me for the next steps. And so academically, I think the transition was very easy. And then socially, I mean, I think there's something to be said spending 7 years of your life going to a school where, your identity is, you are Armenian. And every day you walk out of the door, you're in America, but then when you go to St. Stephen's, then you're surrounded by this community that really at a young age teaches you what it is to be Armenian. It makes you feel as though you're part of the community. So, you know, I wasn't an American with Armenian heritage. I was an American Armenian or Armenian American. You know, it was who I am. And so moving on to, you know, a public school where I think I was the only Armenian, it wasn't an issue. I was confident in my identity. And so, you know, I would go around proudly telling people, yes, I'm Armenian. Yes, I'm Armenian. And this was well before the Kardashians. So no one knew what that was. So I had to educate people on that. And, you know, I felt as though because I had gone to an Armenian school, it really helped me in securing my identity.
Would you like to share anything, Varant, about higher education, how things went for you in, you know, high school, college, same thing?
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I think it certainly helped. The fundamentals were set early on, and then you just build on them. So, you know, high school was, you know, no harder. And then, you know, college, of course, is always tricky, and graduate school is difficult. But I think once you have your fundamentals established, especially at such an early age, I think it's a very, it helps a lot moving forward.
Thank you. Shant, would you like to go next?
Me or okay. Yeah, I kind of alluded to it earlier, but you know, the transition to middle school and then to high school was, I think, in terms of the workload, I hadn't considered that you know, we don't have to do Armenian Armenian work going into middle school. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have so much free time. Definitely the time management piece. You know, you have to do all your math homework, all your science homework, English, social studies, and then you also have to kind of allot time for uğraştırma, parer, yevailen. And obviously you want to, you know, when it comes to the uğraştırma, you want to impress Dean Artemis and do as well as possible. So I think a lot of people put a good amount of effort into that. And especially for me transitioning into middle school, I felt like I was very prepared to take on all the classes. And I didn't feel behind at all. I thought that the academic preparation was, you know, more than enough, especially with, you know, after school math programs. And I think we even had like French classes at one point in 4th grade. So having that sort of background, being bilingual, having a very unique experience in elementary school prepared me really well. And I have to say, you know, I still think about some of the lessons I learned from Dean Artemis, like Nachtas Abachach. That sort of mentality stuck with me even till now in medical school. You know, it's tempting to, when it's 70 degrees out, like today, to just go outside and walk around and enjoy the weather. But, you know, when there's work to be done, you have to get your work done. And I hear Dean Artemis in my head every time I think about, you know, oh, I can do it later, I can put off my work. But it's like Nachtas Abachach. So, yeah.
Ohan, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. I mean, to be fair, I went to Belmont Middle School and then Belmont High School. So I did go to a school and I joined a class that had a fair amount of Armenians. So just to caveat what I'm going to say. But I think nonetheless, I think my experiences at St. Stephen's, you know, the camaraderie I built with my friends who are lifelong friends to me, mastering Armenian and understanding the cultural aspects and all of that, the history, were absolutely nothing but an additional strength for me. I have never viewed it as anything other than that. It's always been an additional strength to me. And this was before the time where now, you know, the fad is, oh my God, you know so many languages, like that's so cool, right? This was even before that. And it was still such an important strength, just, you know, having a different background, having this diversity. Now there's so much attention on diversity and inclusiveness. Back then there wasn't, and I'm not even that old, but still. Back then there wasn't, but even then it was just such an absolute strength. And we really, our group of friends who transitioned from St. Stephen's to Belmont together, we really sort of, I think, did a very good job of, you know, staying close and keeping each other very well supported, emotionally, physically, mentally, whatever that may be, but also being very, very open to, you know, spreading our wings, spreading our network, gaining friends from Amerigatsis or other walks of life, because that's very important in life as well. So I think it was my background and my experiences at St. Stephen's really helped sort of give us a safety net, if you will, for lack of better words, to fall back on. And if anything, it really helped us sort of propel our network, because it really gave us something unique, a unique flavor to put onto, you know, networking. I mean, I don't mean networking in a professional setting because we were young, of course, but networking socially, playing in the playground. When we started joining soccer teams and football teams and basketball teams, it became like the, whoa, who's that Armenian kid? And it was something that was really, you know, something you could shine a spotlight on. It was fun. It was, you were sort of a very unique group of kids, and we all were, you know, outgoing, social, smart. I mean, it sounds like a fairy tale, but it honestly, I think we as a group did an amazing job. So for me, my experiences going into secondary, yes, there were some challenges, such as life. I mean, it's no different than if you were to switch towns in the middle of schooling, right? I think that may even be harder because you're starting completely from scratch. So of course there's challenges. Of course, there's some road bumps. Of course, you have the tendency to fall back very strongly on the core group that you're very, very close friends with. But I think if you have a supportive group, you have supportive parents, you have a supportive community, like hopefully we all did. I know my class definitely did. It's definitely something that's an added benefit. It's definitely something that's advantageous to you and myself as a youth growing up, even more so in high school, even more so going into college, because as we get older, people become that sort of factor of the diversity thing just becomes even more beneficial to you. It just becomes so much more unique, your background. People start caring about where you're from, what your culture is, what your history is. And being Armenian, guys, it's a true honor. Seriously, it's an honor, and it's something we should all be proud of, because we have a lot of things that a lot of other cultures and ethnicities and nationalities just do not have. Be it our history, be it our thriving culture, be it our language, be it our alphabet, be it everything. I mean, it's something that often goes unsaid, I think, and it's incorrect for it to go unsaid. So I think these are all skills and, you know, tools that growing up in the St. Stephen's world, we sort of develop, and we should absolutely leverage them to the best of our abilities. And I think it's sort of very advantageous to do so moving into secondary and high school education.
Thank you, Ilhan. Adi?
So my transition from St. Stephen's was to the Watertown public school system, which is probably the local school system that houses the most Armenians. So little caveat, like Ilhan Shan mentioned, but
yeah, Adi had a cheat code. That's not fair.
Cheat code, yeah. No, I really did. It was an advantage. You know, having friends, people I knew, coming into the, you know, first, sixth grade, and I think most places towns have multiple elementary schools, so it really is like a mixing pot that first year. But going in and, you know, having friends who are Armenian, people who I, you know, spent 7-8 years with a huge advantage. But by no means limiting to, you know, how I could branch out and who I made friends with. Something that I, you know, will never forget is my transition from sitting at my lunch table with exclusively Armenian friends for probably like the first couple months at school, to finally each of us had sort of branched out, and we had our own interests. So we ate lunch with our own friends, and by like the end of my 6th grade year, my mom was packing like 3 or 4 lemon more than she normally would, so I could hand them out at lunch to all my friends because they loved it. All my American friends, non-Armenian. So you know, having the Armenian background and culture was, you know, I did have a cheat code, but it was easy to make friends. You know, even not knowing people, but just because it is a mixing pot coming out of elementary school. From an academic perspective, you know, I share the sentiment. I think St. Stephen's prepared me incredibly well. One of my also vivid memories was, you know, I have an older sibling and, you know, cousins who are older than us who would finish school earlier because Armenian, you know, St. Stephen's has the extra block of Armenian class. So, you know, as most of you are familiar, older siblings, friends coming from the public school system who have graduated, wait for that class to finish, you know, and then meet their siblings and they leave together. And I always remember meeting them, and the ones who had gone to, you know, many different middle schools would say, oh, like middle school is a breeze. It's so easy. You know, they give less homework. You know, they're not as demanding. It's not as challenging. And there was a little bit of jealousy there because, of course, like, you know, we wanted to cut some slack too, but it wasn't incredibly invaluable because we had already experienced, you know, like Shant mentioned, a little bit more academic rigor, taking a second language so early. So I definitely think from an academic perspective, it helped. And I'll also say the class size was small, and it's so personal with the teachers. I think the rate at which they identify students that need more challenging work is much faster, in my experience, than the public school system. They have such a larger pool, and you know, it's a little more. Takes a little more time for them to identify people who need, you know, more challenging work. But at St. Stephen's, I feel like it happened relatively quickly, and we pushed our boundaries. They pushed us relatively early, giving us harder and harder work, so we didn't ever feel like, you know, things were too easy. So just a slight difference there. And then as far as transition to high school and college, you know, I think middle school and high school gave ample opportunity to adjust to, you know, the normal public school system curriculum, or really the American way of academics. So, you know, no issues at all, only advantages, like my, you know, fellow alumni mentioned here.
Thank you, Adi. Next question is, how has your experience, and some of you have shared this, so in helping you, how has your experience at the school shaped your path for your careers or your studies? Why don't we start with Adi?
Sure. So I remember, you know, right from a young age at St. Stephen's, science and math, you know, were always the most, actually secondary only to Armenian class, with the most exciting and enthusiastic academic classes I had. Well, maybe at the time I would have told you gym class too, but it was the most exciting subject for me. And I think Varan touched on a key point, was there was a lot of cool projects that they would allow us to do, creative things that really challenged you to think differently. And I remember, you know, there were plenty of after school programs and opportunities for us to continue to challenge ourselves outside of, you know, the day-to-day typical class. So I would say those two things were invaluable in shaping, you know, myself and my attraction to the sciences. You know, I can't sit here and say that I knew I wanted to work in the pharmaceutical industry coming out of, you know, St. Stephen's, but it was an integral part in knowing, learning what I was good at, what I enjoyed doing in the classroom setting, and being something that, you know, I can't help but mention is the competitiveness that we had amongst ourselves, to a healthy competitiveness. But you know, whether it was like the Mad Minute math tests, or you know, different ways that we would challenge each other and push each other, aside from, you know, strictly from the teacher or the, you know, the curriculum, we would challenge each other and really push each other to do better and, you know, be better at our schoolwork too.
Thank you, Adi. Shant, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. I, like Adi, didn't come out of St. Stephen's knowing I wanted to go into medicine, but I did really love the sciences because of a field trip to the Museum of Science with my class. I vividly remember going to the human body exhibit and just being in awe, just thinking, wow, this is how we're built. This is, at an elementary level, but, this is how our body works. And it definitely spurred interest in the sciences and biology. I think that experience will stick with me forever, and I still get excited when I walk by the Museum of Science, just thinking about those memories. And again, the rigor of the St. Stephen's curriculum with regard to STEM, and I believe even now there's a particular focus to STEM at St. Stephen's. There's tons of accessibility in terms of technology and computer sciences and learning how to use all these different softwares, which I'm not sure that you would necessarily get elsewhere. That kind of intimate level support in a small class size. I think that sentiment was definitely felt even back when we had those Windows XP computers playing Math Blaster or whatever other program, and sort of having fun with STEM and knowing that there's things to be discovered, spurring that curiosity. And I think that was like the driving force for me as I went to middle school and high school and then in college, that sense of curiosity and wanting to discover more through research and what have you.
Thank you. Han Chan?
I mean, to be honest, I don't have much further to add because I think my sentiments are very well expressed by Shant and Adi both. Yeah, I mean, it's tough to know what you want to be when you come out at 5th grade. Everyone has dreams and aspirations, which I think are great to have. One thing I can say very confidently is I definitely knew I wanted to end up in the sciences somewhere. And I just think, again, like both Shant and Adi expressed it, smaller class sizes really helps you, get into the weeds of things, right? It really helps you be hands-on with experiments, with learnings, really immerse yourself into STEM. And I'd like to say at an early age, I sort of realized that really is what sort of interests me. That really is what sort of lights up that light bulb, if you will, amongst other things, of course. But I think it was just, going through all those grades, learning about the various STEM elements and scientific elements that really sort of got my mind working along the lines of, okay, well, how can we progress this further? And then obviously going into middle school and high school, you sort of develop on those learnings that you've had. But I truly enjoyed it. I think science was my favorite class. Highest Badminton, of course, but science was definitely my favorite class, and it really sort of helped spark things.
Thank you. Varan?
Yeah, so I mean, I'd just be echoing what everyone else has already said, but I do want to emphasize that there's really room to be creative at the school, as well as just curious, which I think is essential for being a scientist. Like everyone else, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to be. I mentioned I wanted to be an anthropologist, or I wanted to go hunt for fossils, and then I think in middle school I wanted to be a doctor or a zookeeper even, and then you end up moving around and figuring out exactly what you like. But I think at an early age it's critical to not stymie someone's curiosity, and I think at St. Stephen's there was none of that. If you were curious, you were allowed to be curious. And I think maybe part of that, I guess I never really acknowledged it or realized it until everyone else was mentioning it, but the class sizes were small. And that I think really helped. You had a connection with the teachers, and so they would listen to you and listen to what you were interested in. And I think yeah, just being allowing kids to be kids and be curious, I think was the most important thing that's really helped in me and in my journey at least, and that's something that I carry on.
Thank you. So our last question is something that a lot of our listeners are probably very interested in hearing about, because that's why they've also tuned in, is what your research and your work with drug and vaccine development has been like. Each of you have very unique situations and different experiences, so please feel free to share as much as you can. And Bara, why don't we begin with you, since you're our oldest scientist on the panel, and you can tell us about where you work and what you do and how that's all connected to the vaccine, if you can share.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for pointing that out, that I am the oldest on the panel.
The most
Love
senior scientist,
um,
the most
so,
wisdom.
yeah, let's go with that. So I'm a scientist at Pfizer in the vaccine research and development program at Pearl River. So I guess I have a colleague over here in Audi, and I didn't even know. So I actually worked on the COVID vaccine. I can't really say too much about it, but I've worked on the COVID vaccine along with other programs that have come through. Maybe more specifically, I work on developing the tools necessary to actually do the research or to test the products or the vaccine that's being made. So if you make the vaccine, or you make, I think people are familiar with the fact that Pfizer is an mRNA vaccine. So if you make that molecule, how do you know you made what you made, or what you made is good? So I work on developing the tools necessary to assess that, to determine whether or not you're actually producing what you think you're producing. How the quality of that production, are there other things going on? And then we work closely with just a bunch of groups within Pfizer and Pearl River, and a bunch of different sites across the country towards the development of the vaccine, or the COVID vaccine, and others. So I guess I'll leave it at that, and then if other people have questions, I'll try and answer them later on.
Thank you. Yes, if anyone has any questions for our scientists, please put them in the chat and we'll ask them at the end. Ohan Shant, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. I guess I'll give a brief build up into how I got to where I got to, and it's sort of tough to give everything in all encompassing, so I'm happy to answer any direct questions from the chat. So I did, like Heather mentioned, I did an undergraduate in biomedical engineering. I did a PhD also in biomedical engineering, where I focused in drug delivery and pharmaceuticals. So that was sort of naturally where I knew I wanted to end up, was in the pharma world. However, I sort of took a little bit of an alternate route. So instead of ending up in research, which is sort of a typical path for a PhD, I wanted to shift myself more towards the business end of things, and more towards the management end of things. So I decided to go into management consulting, where I've done now 2 years of management consulting specifically for the pharma industry. I focused a lot on development operations, go-to-market strategies, change and project management, transformations, you name it. I think I've done it, mostly around strategy of development and strategy of commercialization, specifically for pharma products. While I haven't worked on any of the COVID vaccines, I think both of the mRNA COVID vaccines, namely Pfizer and Moderna, have a strong history or a strong link to what I do now. So as of very recently, actually April, I'm now the Associate Director for the Global Oncology Business Franchise here at Merck KGaA Darmstadt, Germany. What I do is I'm in charge of strategic initiatives for the oncology business, for the commercial side of the oncology business. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because both of the mRNA vaccines, again, Moderna and Pfizer, this mRNA technology, and I'm sure my colleagues on the panel can help me explain this as well. the mRNA vaccines, BioNTech, which is partnered with Pfizer in this co-commercialization, co-development model here, is a oncology company, actually. It's a biotech that has several mRNA vaccines rooted in oncology, which is the study of cancer, of course. So they have several mRNA vaccines in various stages of clinical development targeting different cancers. So likewise, Moderna has also 2 mRNA technology assets that are in various stages of clinical development, again, targeted at various cancers. So I think the mRNA vaccines have a very strong link to oncology. So again, while I haven't worked directly on the vaccines, I have a very strong knowledge of the oncology world and the oncology space. And I think inherently, one thing that will come out of this is knowledge of mRNA technologies, more interest in mRNA technologies. And that's a very, very, very good thing for cancer. Cancer is a terrible, myriad of diseases. So the more, firepower we can devote to various next generation technologies, such as mRNA, to sort of find alternate routes to, defeat, destroy, eventually, hopefully cure various cancers, that's all the better for society and all the better for the world. So that's what I do. I work specifically on oncology medicines and how we can strategically commercialize them. So, for example, the Moderna vaccine, when it came out after clinical development, after the clinical trials, they have to commercialize their asset, right? They have to sell their asset. They have to, market it, and they have to do various things. Obviously, COVID is a sort of special environment. You don't really have to market your drug. Everyone wants it, regardless of what it really is. It's a special circumstance, but other drugs and therapeutics, when they're developed, have faced strict competition. So you have to show how your asset is differentiated, both clinically or biologically, from other competitor assets in the field. And that's what I work on as my role as Associate Director of Strategy. I really try and think about how we can strategically place our cancer medicines versus competitor medicines in the market, and how we can best deliver them to patients for what they need to do. And again, happy to answer any specific questions from the chat. It's a broad field, so if I keep going, I won't stop.
Thank you, Ahanshan. It's a good tip of the iceberg. We're getting a little education. Thank you.
Exactly.
Adi, would you like to continue?
Sure. So I started working at the Pfizer Andover site about 4 years ago. And the Pfizer Andover site is unique, not just within the Pfizer network, but I think globally a lot of pharma sites. So we have both R&D as well as manufacturing. And our site is a critical pivot point, I guess, in the development and commercialization of a drug candidate. So basically, we serve as the transition from a possibility at the research bench scale to making a process, developing a process that's commercially sustainable and consistent. And we really facilitate that through both a combination of a deep understanding of the science. I think Vanan mentioned development of assays and methods to characterize what exactly we're producing and understand that we're making our product with high quality and high purity, all the way to the engineering of how can we optimize this process to make as much of this as we can, particularly relevant for the COVID vaccine, because we can't get enough of it. We want to distribute it as fast as we possibly can, manufacture and distribute. So our site, and I recommend a recent National Geographic joint documentary that Pfizer put together. It's called Mission Possible, where they mention, the Andover site. We actually make the mRNA for the COVID vaccine. All of that is made at my site. So I had the opportunity as a process engineer to understand and be helpful part of transitioning the process very rapidly to our site. I think part of the reason they chose Andover as one of the nodes in the supply chain to manufacture is that we had the capability and understanding of making these complex biologics, these biologically derived medicines that these cells produce for us, both for clinical materials, so for clinical trials, as well as commercial. And like I said, us being in between all these major pivot points in the life cycle and development of a drug candidate allowed us to quickly go through a lot of the, jump through a lot of the steps that typically would take months and years. So my role as a process engineer is really to understand and troubleshoot and problem solve, taking some process that was made at the benchtop scale to manufacture these things, and designing and adjusting a facility to manufacture that at scale. So we don't make, just, handfuls and liters of stuff, but really hundreds of liters that are capable of, supporting manufacturing for the ridiculous billions of doses that Pfizer strives to make of the COVID vaccine. That's what I do. Again, like I said, I'm open to answering questions. I think I commend Varan, Shant, and Ohan on doing a good job of explaining sort of what we're involved in a brief period of time. I'm sure we'd all love to talk forever and get into the details about it, but yeah, we can answer any questions, I guess.
Thank you, Adi. You all can get together after this forum and chat. That's above our pay grade here at the round table. Shant, would you like to finish up our panelists on what you're doing? Yours is a little different, obviously. You have two different things, so give us a little bit of background.
Yeah, so I think naturally I'm the earliest in my career out of everyone here. So, I can talk a bit about my transition from undergraduate education into what I did in the 2 years before medical school and then into medical school. And I'll try to make it brief, just like everyone else. I could talk about this forever. So I did student research, as Heather mentioned, at Tufts undergrad in geographic medicine and infectious disease. And what really stuck out to me was the way in which work at the bench or work in the laboratory informed a lot of clinical decisions that ultimately impact patient lives. And I think that is an amazing concept, linking biological basic science research and translating it into a medicine, a therapeutic that can save a life. And that's what drove my decision to go into vaccine research. Although I didn't go into industry, I stayed in academia. I was interested in sort of the research and development side of bringing these medicines to patients. And so that's what led me to the Baruch Lab at the Center for Virology and Vaccine Research at Beth Israel. And, originally the lab wasn't focused on COVID for obvious reasons. We were focusing on developing a vaccine for HIV. And what's interesting and what I think a lot of these vaccines share is that they're built on a platform that's been looked into and worked on for decades. As Anshant mentioned, like the mRNA vaccines, their roots, I guess, came from cancer research and potentially using these vaccines to target different kinds of cancers. And I think that made it very easy for the research to transition into focusing on COVID, for example. And so the lab that I worked in ended up being we ended up working on the vaccine, which became the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, the Ad26. And so that platform was originally being developed to target HIV, and that's still in clinical trials. And I found it super interesting that one medicine or one therapeutic, one vaccine has the potential to, go to underserved areas like in sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia, where access to treatments to prevent or to mitigate the impact of disease aren't at the same level as developed countries like in the United States. And so developing a vaccine to help alleviate that burden, I think really connected with me wanting to go into medicine and really kind of work for equity in healthcare delivery, you know, and my connection to Armenia as well, ensuring that, you know, the people in Armenia are getting the level of healthcare that they deserve. And so that's how I transitioned into applying to medical school. And I'm here now, thankfully, after a very long process. But going sort of from basic science research to in undergrad to working in vaccine development, sort of more on the academic side in the 2 years before, and then coming back full circle into medical school and kind of wrapping it up and seeing the potential impact that this research can have with patients was like, it was unparalleled. And I'm really happy that I got to have that experience before starting medical school. And so now that I'm here, you know, it's hard to explain. I think people who are in medical school, you know, understand the volume of work and the amount of time and effort that you have to put in. But when you're somewhere that you're happy, when you're somewhere that you know this is what you want to do, the work isn't the issue at all. You know, you're happy to be doing what you're doing. And so I guess to wrap things up, now that I'm here, I'm grateful for the experiences. And, you know, in 8 years from now, you'll maybe see me in a clinic somewhere nearby.
Thank you, Shant, very much. So I am looking in my chat and there aren't any questions, but Aramin Hagopian, who is a current parent, has written me a message. Aramin, would you like to unmute yourself and make this comment yourself? If you can hear me.
Hold on.
There you are. So
Sorry.
Aramin, introduce yourself and who your children, what grades or whatever.
Well, my better half is Armenoe. Avo is in 2nd grade. Arev is in nursery 2. And we were just reflecting, I've been in the biotech pharma industry for 25 plus years, and I'm just blown away by the knowledge of the panelists here. So I hope for the same for our kids, and I feel in very good hands. And also, if there's any networking you all want to do, if that's helpful, reach out. But I'm super impressed, and it just bodes well for hopefully the next generation to come. So no question here. I'm just impressed.
Thank you, Aramin. I just thought it'd be better if you said it than me reading your comment. Thank you very much. If anyone does have a question, I don't see any. So would any of you, before we part, like to give any parting words or to our current parents that are with us this evening, or some of our maybe potential parents? I can't see the list right now, but if you'd like to say anything to our parents with some parting words, feel free to unmute yourself and share. Oh, Michael Guzalian has his hand up. Okay, Michael, go ahead.
No, that's applause.
That's applause.
I saw Christine do it, so I figured I'd do it.
Okay, we're all applauding.
No, but let me just say, you know, on behalf of the board of directors, just we're so proud of all of our graduates. Certainly these 4 and all of the others, you know, to see the graduates of our school go on and be so successful. It's really, really heartwarming for all of us on the board, and very, very proud of our school, our administration, our teachers, our students, and the families of our students, because everybody takes part and everybody makes the school what it is. So really, really happy to have you guys join us tonight, and looking forward to the next one.
And please read the chat. There are some messages from family. Someone from Anchorage, Alaska. It says Nanor. Do we know what Nanor this is? Vuladian Sabunjan family. Nanor, Steve, Daron, and Lori. Geez, I know everybody. Hudi, do we know? All right. Any parting words? Would anyone like to end this evening with anything? Ohan Shah,
Yeah,
like you're ready to talk.
yeah, maybe I would just keep it super short. Just thank you, thank you to everyone who attended. Thank you for everyone who organized. Any parents out there, current parents out there, you guys are very well versed in what your kids are getting into, and it's an excellent future for them, I hope. Best of luck. And any prospective parents, I mean, we are a living, breathing testament that we can all go on to do really, really amazing things. And you will absolutely not regret sending your kids to this school. It's an unbelievable journey. It provided me with some of the best memories and best friends I've ever had. So short and sweet, like I promised, and just thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, Adi?
Yeah, I just want to thank you again, Heather and Deacon Boyamian, for giving us the opportunity. It's refreshing for me just to hear from fellow alumni and what they've done over the years. We don't always have time to catch up and hear what each other are doing, and I think it's incredibly important for us to reflect on the journey and St. Stephen's impact on how we got here. And I didn't know Vanand before, and we work at the same conference. So now I made a new connection here too. So thank you again for hosting us. It's an honor.
Thank you. Varad?
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone, and especially you, Heather, and Deacon Ori for having me. It was a pleasure talking with everyone and sharing my experience. And it's just, I guess I want to end on the school and being around the Armenian culture is really, it molds you. It makes you who you are. And I like to think that we're all pretty normal and relatively successful. So I wouldn't hesitate to send my own children to the school. I think it's very important. You kind of grow up as a, you feel multinational, even if you were born here, which I think is a wonderful opportunity. So thank you, everyone.
Heather.
I just want to let Shant finish, and then you can say the closing remarks. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely want to thank everyone for being here. It was really cool for me being in science to hear about everyone else's journey in the field. I actually didn't know anything about what you guys did, and I'll probably be reaching out to you to talk more science after this. And to Heather and Deacon Boyamian for organizing this. I think this is an amazing idea to kind of share with parents and just the greater community, the impact that this school has on us and will have on the Armenian community. I worked on this documentary for the school, and in editing it, the one scene that I remember is Deacon Artemis saying, Hayren lezun dun nehayun, which is essentially like the Armenian language is our home. And for anyone who, goes to a new place, picks up their belongings and goes to a different city for college or for a job, you want some sort of familiarity, and having the Armenian language, and as soon as you meet someone who's Armenian and you can use that language with them, you instantly feel that comfort and that familiarity, and just the memories of the school come back to you, and you've instantly made a connection. And you can do as much as you want at home with your kids to try to teach them, but there's so much pressure in today's America to assimilate and sort of forget about that culture, the heritage, the language especially. And having such a strong background and such a strong Armenian education that you're never going to lose that. That's going to stay with you for the rest of your life. And it's always going to give you a tool, a way to connect with other Armenians. And especially, you know, with what's happened in Artsakh in Armenia this year, I think it's especially important to hold on to that, because, you know, we're a nation of survivors, and we'll continue to survive by holding on to our language.
Thank you, Shant. Tigin Huri, would you like to close our evening for us today?
Yes. So Varant, Ohan, Shant, Ari, and Shant, ես ձեզ թիդած եմ մանգամուսուրեն մինչև 5-րդ։ Դեսած եմ ձեր ձաղգիլը, հարաճանալը, իսկ հիմա այսքան դարիներ վերջ ձեզի տեսնել իբրև գիտնականներ, իբրև ասենք պատրաստվող բժիշկներ, իսկապես մեծ հաճույք է իմ համար։ So I'm very proud of our alumni students. And the advice that I will give them is the following. I know they are successful in their fields, each one in their field, but I will always remind you to keep your touch with your classmates, with your school, with your community, and with our homeland. We need you. Եվ այն ինչ որ Սուրբ Ստեփանոս ասկային վարժարանեն ներս ստացած եք, ուրեմն գուզեմ, որ դակ և ծեր լավակույնը ընեք մեր ասկին, մեր ժողովրդին համար։ Շնորհակալություն բոլորիդ. I want to thank all the attendees. I want to thank Heather for organizing with me this event, and also for the 4 participants. This was a marvelous event. And I'm, again, very, very proud of you, our alumni, and we will give a chance to every group to feature, to come and talk to our school community. Thank you again, and have a good night.